What happens when one of television's most respected hosts faces off against a guest who thinks the rules don't apply to her? In just 51 seconds, a simple question about charitable work would trigger the most shocking meltdown in late-night television history. Last night, viewers witnessed something absolutely unprecedented as Meghan Markle stormed off Andy Cohen's show after a heated argument that left everyone in the studio completely speechless. This is the exclusive inside story of how a routine interview turned into television gold and why Andy Cohen is being praised today as the host who finally asked the tough questions that needed to be asked. The evening started like any other night on Andy Cohen's show. The studio buzzed with its usual energy as cameras rolled and the familiar music played. Andy, wearing his signature relaxed smile, welcomed his guest with the kind of warm professionalism that has made him a household name. "Welcome back to the show," Andy said, settling into his chair with that easy confidence viewers have come to love. "I'm here with Meghan Markle, and we're going to dive into some really interesting topics tonight." Meghan sat across from him, perfectly composed in an expensive-looking cream-colored dress, her posture straight and her expression carefully controlled. From the very first moment, something felt different about this interview. There was a tension in the air that even the studio audience seemed to pick up on. "Thank you for having me," Meghan replied, her voice carrying that familiar tone that always seemed to suggest she was doing everyone a favor just by being there. Andy started with what should have been softball questions, the kind of easy conversation starters that guests usually appreciate. He asked about her recent projects, her life in California, general topics that any media-trained person could handle in their sleep. But even with these simple questions, Meghan's answers came with an edge. When Andy mentioned her various business ventures, she corrected him on small details in a way that felt more like scolding than clarification. "Actually, Andy, if you had done your research properly, you would know that the timeline you just mentioned is completely incorrect," she said, her smile never wavering but her tone growing noticeably sharper. Andy, being the professional he is, simply nodded and moved forward. "You're absolutely right. Thank you for the correction," he said graciously, showing the kind of class that has made him successful for so many years. The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the fun, lighthearted conversation they had expected. Something was building, and everyone could feel it. As the interview continued, Andy tried to steer things toward more positive territory. He brought up her charitable work, thinking this would be safe ground where his guests could shine and share some inspiring stories. "Let's talk about your foundation work," Andy said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "You've been involved with several organizations over the years. Can you tell us about the impact you've been able to make?" This should have been an easy question, the kind that allows any guest to highlight their good work and connect with the audience. Instead, Meghan's expression hardened. "I find it interesting that you're asking me to justify my charitable work," she said, her voice taking on a defensive tone that seemed to come out of nowhere. "Is this something you ask all your guests, or just me?" Andy looked genuinely confused. "I'm not asking you to justify anything," he replied calmly. "I'm giving you a platform to share the positive work you're doing. I ask similar questions to everyone who comes on the show." "Do you really?" Meghan shot back, her composure starting to crack. "Because it feels like you're questioning my commitment to these causes." The audience was dead silent now. This wasn't going the way anyone had expected, and Andy's expression showed he was trying to figure out how to get the interview back on track. "I think there might be a misunderstanding here," Andy said, maintaining his professional demeanor even as the situation grew more uncomfortable. "I'm simply interested in hearing about the work you're passionate about." "There's no misunderstanding," Meghan replied, her voice rising slightly. "I know exactly what this is about." Andy paused, clearly trying to process what was happening. Here was a host who had interviewed thousands of celebrities, handling everything from promotional visits to damage control appearances, and he was watching a routine question about charity work turn into something completely unexpected. "I'm not sure what you think this is about," Andy said carefully, "but I genuinely just wanted to discuss your philanthropic efforts." Meghan's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Right, of course you did," she said, her words dripping with sarcasm. "Just like you genuinely wanted to have me on the show to begin with." The camera captured Andy's face perfectly at that moment, showing a mix of confusion and professional concern. He was clearly trying to understand how asking about charitable work had become some kind of attack in his guest's mind. "I absolutely wanted you on the show," Andy replied honestly. "That's why you're here." "Am I?" Meghan asked, her tone becoming more confrontational by the second. "Or am I here because your producers thought it would make good television to put me in an uncomfortable position?" Andy's eyebrows raised slightly. This was clearly not going according to any script or expectation he might have had. "Nobody wants to make you uncomfortable," Andy said, his voice remaining steady and professional. "We invited you here to have a conversation, just like we do with every guest." "Just like every guest?" Meghan repeated, her voice getting louder. "So you treat everyone with this level of disrespect?" The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this surreal exchange unfold. Andy looked like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't have all the pieces to. "I'm not sure what I've said that you're finding disrespectful," Andy replied, genuinely seeming to search for understanding. "Could you help me understand what's bothering you?" And that question, asked with complete sincerity and professionalism, would be the spark that lit the fuse, because what happened next would shock everyone watching and create the most talked about television moment in recent memory. That sincere question from Andy about what was bothering her was like throwing gasoline on a fire. What happened next left everyone in the studio absolutely stunned and created a moment that will be replayed for years to come. Meghan's face flushed red as she leaned forward in her chair, pointing directly at Andy with an accusatory finger. "What's bothering me?" she said, her voice now raised enough that everyone in the studio could hear the anger building. "What's bothering me is that you think you can sit there and interrogate me like I'm some kind of criminal." Andy's expression showed complete bewilderment. Here was a man who had built his career on making guests feel comfortable and welcome, being accused of treating someone like a criminal for asking about their charity work. "Meghan, I truly don't understand," Andy said, his voice remaining calm despite the chaos unfolding in front of him. "I asked you about your foundation work because I thought it was something you'd want to talk about." "Don't," Meghan snapped, holding up her hand like a stop sign. "Don't sit there and pretend this is about giving me a platform. This is about making me look bad on television." The camera operator seemed unsure whether to keep rolling, but Andy gave a subtle nod to continue. This was live television, and whatever was happening needed to be handled in real time. "Making you look bad?" Andy repeated, his confusion evident in every word. "How is asking about your charitable work making you look bad?" "Because you're questioning everything I do," Meghan shot back, her voice getting shriller. "Every answer I give, you want more details, more explanations. You're treating me like I'm lying about helping people." Andy shook his head slowly, clearly trying to process this interpretation of events that seemed to have no basis in what had actually happened during the interview. "I haven't questioned anything you've said," Andy replied with the patience of someone dealing with a completely unreasonable situation. "I've been asking follow-up questions because that's what hosts do. That's how conversations work." "Conversations?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "This isn't a conversation, Andy. This is an ambush." The studio audience was watching this unfold like they were witnessing a car crash in slow motion. Some people had their mouths open in shock. Others were looking around to see if anyone else could believe what they were seeing. "An ambush about charity work?" Andy asked, and for the first time there was a slight edge to his voice. Not anger, but the kind of firmness that comes when someone has been pushed beyond all reasonable limits. "Yes, an ambush," Meghan insisted, her voice now loud enough to echo slightly in the studio. "You invited me here under false pretenses so you could attack my character on live television." Andy paused for a long moment, clearly weighing his words carefully. When he spoke, his voice was measured but firm. "Meghan, with all due respect, nobody has attacked your character," he said. "I asked you about your charity work because it's something positive in your life that I thought viewers would be interested to hear about." "There it is again," Meghan said, throwing her hands up dramatically. "You thought viewers would be interested. This isn't about me at all, is it? This is about your ratings." Andy's jaw tightened slightly, the first real sign that his professional composure was being tested. "Every talk show is about connecting guests with viewers," Andy said, his voice remaining steady but with a new firmness. "That's literally what television is. I'm not sure what you expected when you agreed to come on a talk show." "I expected to be treated with respect," Meghan fired back immediately. "And you have been," Andy replied without hesitation. "Every single moment of this interview, you have been treated with nothing but respect." "Respect?" Meghan's voice cracked with what sounded like either anger or disbelief. "You call this respect? Putting me on the spot? Making me defend myself?" "I haven't put you on the spot about anything," Andy said, and now his voice carried the weight of someone who had reached the end of their patience. "I asked you about your charity work. That's it. One question about charity work?" "It's not what you asked, it's how you asked it," Meghan insisted, though anyone watching could see that Andy had asked the question in the most neutral, friendly way possible. "How did I ask it?" Andy said, leaning back in his chair. "Please, tell me how I could have asked about your charitable work in a way that wouldn't have upset you." Meghan opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, then opened it again. For a moment, it seemed like she realized she had no good answer to that question. "You know what?" she said finally, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I don't have to sit here and let you make me the villain. Nobody is making you anything, Andy replied, his professionalism intact despite everything. You're a guest on my show, and I'm trying to have a conversation with you. A conversation where you get to be the hero and I get to be the problem, Meghan said, standing up from her chair so abruptly that it rolled backward. The entire studio gasped. This was clearly not planned, not scripted, not something anyone had prepared for. Please sit down, Andy said, his voice gentle but concerned. Let's talk about whatever is really bothering you. What's bothering me is you, Meghan said, pointing at him again with such force that her whole arm shook. What's bothering me is this whole setup, this whole fake friendly act while you try to tear me down. Andy stood up as well, not in an aggressive way, but like someone trying to de-escalate a situation that had gone completely off the rails. Meghan, I promise you, there is no act here, he said, his voice sincere and calm. I'm not trying to tear anyone down. I never have, and I never will. Then why do I feel like I'm being attacked? She demanded, her voice breaking slightly. I don't know, Andy said honestly, and his genuine confusion was clear to everyone watching. But you're not being attacked. You're safe here. Safe? Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm on live television being humiliated by someone who pretends to be my friend. I'm not pretending anything, Andy said, his voice growing firmer. And nobody is being humiliated except by their own behavior. Those words hit like a thunderbolt. The studio fell completely silent as everyone processed what Andy had just said. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mean. But it was the truth spoken by someone who had been pushed beyond all reasonable limits. Meghan's face went white, then red, then white again. Excuse me? She said, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow more menacing than when she had been shouting. You heard me, Andy said quietly. Your behavior tonight has been completely unreasonable, and everyone watching knows it. My behavior? Meghan's voice rose to a near shriek. My behavior is the problem? Yes, Andy said simply. It is. And with that, Meghan Markle ripped off her microphone, threw it on the floor, and stormed toward the exit. This interview is over, she announced to no one in particular as she marched past the shocked camera crew. Meghan, please. Andy called after her, but she was already at the studio door. She turned back one final time, her face flushed with rage. Don't ever contact me again, she said, her voice carrying across the silent studio. And don't expect me to forget this. With that, she pushed through the studio doors and disappeared, leaving Andy standing alone on set with the studio full of shocked people and millions of viewers who had just witnessed the most dramatic talk show meltdown in television history. Andy looked directly into the camera, took a deep breath, and said the words that would be quoted everywhere by morning. Well, that was something, he said with a slight smile. When we come back, we'll have some music and hopefully a much calmer conversation. The camera faded to commercial as Andy shook his head, looking like a man who still couldn't quite believe what had just happened on his own show.